Welcome to Overtime the Podcast, a show dedicated to all things watches, with a special love for micro brands and their affordable range. I'm your host Praka, and some of you might know me as Kinda Average Watches. Join me as we explore new releases, share tips on building your collection, and put in some overtime with hands-on reviews of the latest watches. Whether you're a bit of a pro or you're just getting into the hobby, this podcast will keep you entertained with great stories from the people in the industry, casual conversations, and guest hosts who bring their own unique perspectives. Let's get started. G'day listeners, thanks for tuning in to Overtime the Podcast, proudly sponsored by Watchpoint. Pretty special episode today. Today I'm joined by Nick Ferrell from DC Vintage Watches. Nick is an incredibly knowledgeable and passionate guy about vintage watches, and in particular vintage Seiko. Nick is the go-to guy, and I think I'm really underselling that, and an authority for vintage Seiko. So welcome, Nick, to Overtime the Podcast. And as a vintage Seiko nut myself, it's an absolute thrill and an honor to have you on.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. And obviously, I'm always very ready to talk about Seiko, usually vintage, but modern as well. I mean, Seiko is that gateway drug that most people, I'd say 95% of the people that get into watches start with Seiko. And some of us, like myself, never leave it. We may dabble in other things non-Seiko, but we always come back to it.
Always come back to it. Exactly. Something that draws in. Awesome. All right. Look, like in most watch podcasts here too, we like to kick things off with a customary wrist check. So what have you got on your wrist, mate?
Sure. So this is actually a watch that I originally picked up because I intended to sell it, and then, which is again, go back to the gateway drug thing. It's a occupational hazard where like you just fall in love with something and you don't want to sell it. And this one, I had always said I would never get one of these because this is a 1968 Seiko 6106 8100, and these were issued along with 3 or 4 other references to Military Assistance Command Viet Studies and Observation Group, which was a cover name for mostly Green Beret force of special forces fighting in countries neighboring Vietnam where they weren't supposed to be.
Hmm.
So they were given these watches because they could be, for plausible deniability. It wasn't a U.S. military issued Hamilton or anything like that. It was a Seiko, and a lot of their kit was the same way. So what really sold me on this one was the loom has really aged to this, like, I think I see the term used, and I never thought I would use it myself because it always seemed a little corny, but it definitely fits, and it's like pumpkin. So it's kind of like a pumpkin aged patina on the loom, and it's uniform on the hands. The dial it's gorgeous. And I had never seen any other example with loom that had aged in this way. And we sell maybe 1 or 2 of these watches a month.
Wow.
And we sold them for years now, and I've never seen one like this. So I kind of like I said, I
Gotta
stuck
keep
with
it. This is
had,
beautiful.
what is it? The Seiko. I'm forgetting the reference, but it's the Navigator Timer, the GMT one, which is almost the exact same watch as the 6106, except there's no GMT, and that's why I was like, I'll never get one of these 6106s because I already have that
The nav
GMT.
timer.
I couldn't resist.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful watch. Obviously for all the listeners out there, I will leave a link to that watch in the show notes, and it's so cool. I'm is that a 62 mass hands as well on it? Is it a similar
Uh,
handset?
no, it's no. Those are a bit wider, a
They
bit
are
fatter.
wider, aren't they? Yep.
They're
Mm,
they're, they're definitely a bit wider
mm.
than I want to say. These are the same handset, I believe, if memory serves, that the GMT uses as well.
Yeah.
Really, even the bezel is very similar. The dial is very similar as well. They both actually come with the same identical bracelet, the same stainless steel bracelet. Yeah.
There you go. Awesome. Fantastic. What an absolute banger. Of course, I'll say what's on my wrist, and it's a Seiko as well. I had to, but it's a modern reference. It's the SPB 143, which is the recreation of the
It is.
62 mass. So yeah, hence why I asked, because I had a look at the photo. I'm like, oh, is it quite the same? No, it's not quite the same. It's a little bit wider, the 62 mass hands, and Yeah, look, what can I say about this watch? It's perfect. It's a nice all-rounder and very sentimental to me as well. As I've regular listeners will know, I received this for my 30th from my family, wife, and best mates. So yeah, I love this watch.
Amazing. Now, yeah, I love to hear stories like that.
Yeah.
Always.
Thanks. Yeah, so fittingly, of course, both Seikos. I wasn't expecting anything less from you, Nick. So we got the wrist check, and yeah, let's get on with it. Let's get up some questions. So again, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it. We obviously live in two sides of the world, and it's nighttime for you where it is now. It's the afternoon for me now. So yeah, appreciate that we could make the timing work. So
When we started, we were in DC, so at least I'm a little bit closer to you
that's
in
true.
Los Angeles. So, there's that at least.
That's exactly true. Before we crack on, I mean, I sort of did a bit of a monologue intro, but really, I think I undersold it. But, can you let the listeners know a little bit about your background, and how you've become, arguably the best vintage Seiko dealer in the world?
Now, I mean, really, it's really been happenstance to get me where I am to this day, like right place, right time, that kind of thing. So, I'll give the real brief version of it. But when I was in college, I actually studied business, and I was bored with the macro and microeconomics courses, which is ironic because I love that stuff now, but I didn't
Yeah.
then. And I was attracted to foreign affairs. So I changed my major. It became international politics, international studies, if you will. And I did another degree in history, both, it was a concentration in military history, a concentration in national security studies, whatever. And I went overseas. I lived in Cairo for a while. I studied Arabic. I was there for about a year and a half in college. And then, yeah, that led to a job with the Department of Defense, and I was what is called a military imagery analyst for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which does the spy satellites. So I did that
Yeah.
for a while, and then I was again right place, right time. I think this was nothing but luck. I had a friend of mine that was finishing up a 2-year tour at the White House Situation Room. I had never given it a second thought, and she hit me up and she's like, "I really think you should apply for this." And I was like, "Why would you think?" And she was like, "Look, you have Arabic. That's a
Yeah.
big deal. Like people, and this you got to time this. This is 2007, so the global war on terror,
Yeah.
whatever, all that was still going on.
Mm,
Obviously, still in Iraq, still in Afghanistan, everything like that. So, there was a reason to what she was saying. So
mm,
I did that. I got the job. Again, I think it was just luck. So I was there under the GW Bush administration, then the Obama administration, for the first 2 years of Obama, and then after that, I became a diplomat for the United States government. So,
mm.
and all the while I had been into watches since high school, if not before then, actually, really. It's a family thing. Both of my grandfathers were into watches. Both of my grandfathers were in the military. One was retired as a colonel from the United States Air Force. The other one was in the Navy during World War II as well. But they both love watches. They pass it to my dad, and then he passed it to me. And my dad did what I will most likely do for both of my kids, and that is just what your wife and your friends did for you, and that is significant events,
Mm.
you get a watch. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, I remember the watches that I was wearing when both of my kids were born. One of them was a Hoyer Autavia Viceroy. The other one was a Mimo Regatta watch. I engraved their names on the back of them, the date they were born, and it says "From Dad with Love." And when they graduate college, they will get those watches.
That's awesome.
So, there's a bit of that. So, but anyway, so the love was there. And my wife one day, circa 2011, 2012, was like, actually, maybe in 2010, I think it was 2010. She was like, "Look, you won't be quiet about watches. Why have you ever thought about, parlaying that passion into a business?"
Mm.
She went to high school with me. She knew that I had a lawn mowing business in high school and like all that. So I had the business
Yeah,
acumen,
the
if you will.
acumen. Yeah. Yeah.
So I had that, and I just on a lark, I just I built up a collection of 10 watches I wanted to sell. Seiko was very heavily represented, and I opened up a seller account on eBay. And I did have it on eBay for like a year, maybe two. And their seller fees, I don't know what they are now, but then they were at least 8%, and they were crazy.
Mm.
I mean, it was great, but the seller fees are high. You're competing against all these other people that some of them are selling, what look to be near new old stock examples, but they're fakeo, and they have all these
Yeah.
fake parts in them. So I didn't want to deal with that. So I started a website, and the rest is really history. We moved out to LA in 2018. My wife is in the entertainment business. She's a producer. So yeah, when I got here, I started doing all the same things I would do when I got a new account when I was either, working in the intelligence community or working as a diplomat. You look at the lay of the land, you look who's important, who's not, and here it's Hollywood. So I started reaching out to actors that I thought had a genuine interest in watches, not ones that are being paid to wear, not an
Mm.
A-list paid to wear a Rolex or
Omega or something. Yeah.
or
Mm.
whatever on the red carpet. I don't. People see through that. I wanted
Yep.
real power. And the first person I reached out to was Daniel Day Kim, and it just went from there. I mean, in all honesty, like we worked together on. I sourced him a few watches. We worked together on a bunch of stuff, and he started recommending me to people, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So it's been really good. I feel like I've been very lucky out here. I won't say it hasn't been hard work because it has,
Yeah.
but at least it's something that I enjoy.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, and we'll come back to the Hollywood in a minute, but it's quite the history, especially, and so much to unpack there. But I'm glad your wife gave you that push to get you into this business because you've been doing great things, and it's great to see. And I love that the birth year watches for your kids, or I guess not birth year, but the watches that they were that you wore when they were born. When my first son was born, I wasn't really into watches that time, so I didn't have a watch on. I don't think at that point, or maybe I did. I can't remember, but I definitely did for my seconds, and I still got that watch, and it's a Seiko actually, but it's a vintage Seiko. It's vintage yeah, a vintage Seiko Lord Matic from 1965, I think. So
That's
it's
10
an old one.
years.
Yeah, that's it. So it's old and it's awesome. Yeah, I think I've only serviced it once and it's still running and ticking fantastically. So,
All right. No, I spoke with a customer, I think it was just this week, and she was kind of agonizing between what dial variant of a Seiko 6139 Bruce Lee to get for her husband. And we're going back and forth. I mean, I love these things because she'd done her research. And she was joking that she knew more about the watch than her husband did, which I think was probably true.
yeah.
And it really came down to I was like, look, we have one now already in stock, you like it, or we can wait, but it'll be a while to get this other dial variant. Which one are you thinking? She was like, well, we have this special event, this big family special event that's coming up for him. It's just in the 11th. It was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, is it important that the watch? She was like, I don't know which one to get. I was like, look, the dial, the variant dial is not going to matter. All that he's going to remember is that when that special event with family and friends and his wife happened, he was wearing this watch. He's not going to care what variant the dial was, even if he was into watches. And it didn't
Yeah.
sound like he was like as hardcore as you and I, but he was starting on that journey. And she decided to get the one that I had in stock, and she wrote back. It went well. She's very happy with it. So building those memories are important. That history, a legend, if you will, with the
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's not just, I guess, the legendary aspect of the watch itself being the Bruce Lee, and we'll get into that one. But yeah, you said building your own special connection with it as well. So fantastic. You touched on it, Daniel Day Kim. I mean, that's a massive name, huge name in Hollywood. And not only that, I've seen videos prior to this chat today. In fact, I think about a year ago or 2 years ago, Ronny Chieng, who is a comedian as well. He spoke about the Bruce Lee, and I think he sourced it from yourself as well, and a few others, Randall Park and more. You sort of mentioned, you reached out to these people that would like watches, but how do you go about navigating this, and how do you
Sure.
source these watches for them?
No, so actually, Daniel introduced me to Ronnie.
Okay,
So that was, he was like, "Hey, he wants one of these Bruce Lee watches. He's gonna reach out." I was like, "Damn, thanks, man. I appreciate
cool.
it." Yeah, awesome. So that Daniel made that very easy for me. He did that with a range of others, like Johan from one of the founders of Lincoln Park,
Wow.
like a bunch of others. Just like, and it can be totally random because Daniel he knows a lot of people, but like it was a kick for me, and I consider Daniel to be a friend. He's a really good guy. Like, he's been really busy of late, but we still talk every now and again. So that's always I always love it when we do that. But like he was on House of Craft recently, and he was interviewed by Ben Clymer from
Ah,
Houdinki. And he
okay.
was wearing a Pogue that he got from us,
There you
which was
go.
kind of like on stage. And I hadn't even seen that episode. I didn't watch it till recently, but it hit Houdinki like a month ago. And Daniel hit me up and he's like, "Hey man, I gave your watch a shout out on stage at House of Craft." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about, but
Yeah,
I'm going to look into it."
that's so cool.
You know, but
Yeah.
with some of the others, it will be once I find these actors, and I don't do it as much as I did when we first moved here, but I
Hmm.
still reach out, a cold pitch, if you will, every now and again. When you find an actor that has what if they're on if they're on talking watches on Houdinki, they like watches.
Of
You know what I
course.
mean? It's very evident. You can tell by some, like, we're talking about watches, the passion's coming through, that we care about these, and you can see that on those talking watches episodes. And I think you read the comments at the end. Daniel's people loved House of Craft. They loved that interview, and Ronnie's people loved because the genuine love
Mhm.
just comes through for watches. But with Ronnie, he what I'll do, sorry, separate with some of these other actors, I will find one that's, they love it. I will reach out to their manager, and the manager tends to know them better than the talent agent, if you will, because the talent
Sure.
agent, for the most part, is looking to make deals. They're looking to make money for the clients
Yeah,
and themselves. I get
fair enough.
that. The manager's getting paid no matter what. They tend to know their clients
Clientele.
better.
Mm.
Some of them, some of these truths are taught in Entourage, literally, and some of that stuff is actually true
Yeah.
from my experience. So you reach out and you're like, you pitch them, and sometimes they like it and sometimes they don't. And if they do like it, then you make a sale or you get a post on Instagram or whatever.
Yep.
Sometimes it leads to, like, recently, I worked with Nick Gonzalez, and that was through Daniel as well, because Daniel bought the rights to The Good Doctor and brought it over from South Korea. And he's like, "Hey, some of the actors on the show want some of your watches to wear on the show." And I'm like, "Cool, hook it
Ah,
up, work with the prop masters, get them on screen, get, all that fun stuff." And that's what happened with Nick Gonzalez, who was on the show. And I said, "I'm a big fan of ABC's The Rookie." And I said, "Hey, there's an actor, Eric Winter, who plays this really stern sergeant. It's kind of like a badass,
yeah.
ex-special forces, ex-marine, like all that fun stuff."
Yeah.
And
Tim Bradford, right? That's his character.
exactly. There it is. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. You did your homework.
Yeah.
And I was literally just watching the most recent episode before the
Oh yeah.
before we. But no, and I said, "Hey, can you introduce me to Eric? Because I think this watch would be perfect for his character." And it was literally that same 6106 8100 ref that I'm wearing right now, that Bradford, if you will, or Eric
Yeah.
Winters, on the show. And it's a kick for me every now and again. I look over when he's in the
That's
police
so
uniform,
cool.
can't watch, and he wears it with the compass, with this 1960s era Waltham vintage compass. So it's like, I love to see the little details at Hollywood when they get it right. It's awesome. Like, not everyone wants to wear, and they're good, don't get me wrong. Not everyone
Mm.
wears a G-Shock when they're out in the field. And I've worked with, in my other life, more than enough military officers in the rank and file to know that not everyone wears a G-Shock. Some
Yeah.
people wear other.
Amazing. I just want to say I binged the Rookie 1 to 5 I think in like a couple of weeks, and then
Yep,
unfortunately
I've done
in
that
Netflix Australia we didn't have any of the other episodes released yet, so it is coming soon I think. So I just got a little, I don't know if you noticed, but I became pretty excited when you were like, oh wait, I know that guy. Actually, like I was just been literally watching him all the time, and how cool is that? Also a
too.
vintage
Yeah.
Seiko on his wrist as
No,
well. Yeah.
Eric actually had me on his podcast as well, which was kind of
Ah,
awesome. Yeah, so he does a podcast with his wife,
didn't
and
know that.
yeah, they
Huh.
they had me. But she was doing something, so she wasn't on there. So it was just him and I, and we talked about watches for a lot of it, and, like, some of my background in my career before I started
Yeah.
uh, doing the watch thing full time.
Amazing. Cool. No, it's great to hear the process and everything else. It's awesome. I guess speaking of Hollywood stars, I mean, you did mention that you moved from DC to LA. Your wife's a producer and she works in the entertainment business. Am I correct to say as well that you do quite a bit of work with prop masters? So you provide them watches for various shows and movies and stuff like that. So yeah, how does that work?
Right. Yeah. So it's the most recent show was season 7 of The Rookie.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, it's by no means like our main thing, but it's enough where, like, we do it fairly regularly, and a lot of it is like when prop masters and wardrobe people on these shows want something, they want it yesterday, which
Yeah.
I get.
Mm.
So it's always good. But some of the really good prop masters, I've been fortunate to work with a lot of really excellent prop masters. They've been around for a while. They know that vintage means they're not making more of them, and there may not be a lot of them out there. And they'll try to give you as much heads up as they can. So usually, so it's a matter of them reaching out to me, and they'll either do that because they want to do it themselves for the angle, or because the actor went to them and was like, "Hey, I like this watch." And with Eric, that's what happened. Where like
Mm.
I hit him up before I talked to the prop master and gave him a range of watches which I thought would be a good fit for his character. He actually did choose that 6106 8100. That was my strongest recommended one, and he immediately glommed on it. Like, and if you saw, I don't know if it was season 3 or 4 where they're actually working with like CIA. So there's like, so there's that aspect too, which is kind of cool because CIA was intimately involved with MACV-SOG during that
Yes.
Vietnam conflict. So there's that. But anyway, no, so or the prop masters will reach out, like I said, and usually they want the main watch and then they want backups. Now, if it's a less expensive watch, then they'll just take two of the same watch. But if it's a more expensive watch, they want a watch that looks similar. And for in Eric's case, I actually got Timex watch as the backup, which obviously they're not going to go in real close shots. They're going to be wide shots, but like it looks very, very similar to the Seiko when
Mm.
it's a wide angle shot on there.
Mm.
And they will wear that second backup watch if they're doing like particular like stunts that may break the watch or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I was going to ask, so how does that work then, I guess, especially if it's something that is more expensive or, is it like an insured thing and, if it does break and it's covered or, I mean, how does that work?
I did at the time when Eric got his watch. I think I did supply 2 or 3 extra crystals just in case.
Sure.
Because you never know.
Yeah.
I don't know about insurance. I imagine they probably insure the themselves. And obviously it's all the prop master like, look, I mean, I've got 3 or 4, well, I say 3.5. I've got 3.5 watchmakers, one is part-time.
Sure.
And they can if something really needs to move yesterday, and then I'm gonna move heaven and earth to make sure the prop master gets what he needs on that. So if something goes wrong. But a lot of these prop masters, honestly, they don't even care if it works,
Sure.
which is crazy to us, right?
Yeah.
So for them, that doesn't matter as much. But because some of these actors like to wear it as a personal watch too, again, depending on how much
Sure.
it's worth, I think it's important that it works.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and you mean they don't want it to be running at chronometer spec?
Exactly, exactly.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. That's a nice little insight, and I have no idea about it previously. So cool, listeners. Yeah, I'm going to be watching eagle-eyed now when I watch season 7 of The Rookie. All right. Well, we talked about, I guess, sourcing watches for Hollywood, sourcing watches for, prop masters and people like that. But, out of all these watches that you have sourced, what's your favorite watch that you sourced? It doesn't have to be the watch itself. It can be the story that's attached to it.
The one right now, I mean, there's going to be a lot of those, but the most recent one, which I
Hmm.
think is the one I'll talk about, and I posted a picture on our Instagram a couple times, and it's actually a watch that I sourced for myself, and it was luck of the draw. I think it was on eBay, and it is, while it's not technically what they would call an Orange Boy Autavia, it's like Orange Boy adjacent. So it's like an Autavia with like orange hands and orange highlights in the dial. Gorgeous watch. When I do some of these searches, sometimes I set them very general because you can find diamonds in the rough, not often, but on occasion. And this was one such diamond. And I don't think the person that was selling it knew much about the watch and kind of just said old Tag Heuer, and that was it.
Okay.
And this is a 73663 reference, and I think I paid like 2,500 bucks for it, which
Okay.
is definitely a couple thousand less than it normally goes for in much worse shape. So that was pretty amazing. So, but that's not even the cool part. She kind of hinted that her husband had been former military in the listing, which is kind of a dime a dozen for the most part because a lot of people, particularly shady sellers, will play that angle up. because they're trying to juice people up to get a bidding war going, and it's complete crap. 9 times out of 10, there's no truth to it. In this instance, it was actually, as I talked to her, because we took it off eBay, we exchanged emails, which you're not supposed to do on eBay, but there's ways to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. And we're just talking, and she basically, her husband did SIGINT for the army in West Berlin during the Cold War, and that he
Oh,
bought the watch at a PX.
yeah.
So I'm just like, holy crap, this is an amazing story. So it's ongoing. So I've emailed the husband. We're trying to set up a Zoom call or what have you, so I can talk to this guy and get the story. And if there's something cool in there, it may be a Watches of Espionage story. It might not
Mm.
be. Well, it depends on if he's got some cool stories. Readers love that stuff. I mean, there's enough to get me curious to dig, if you will, into this story. It's a Sigint Hoyer. That's awesome. That's pretty cool. And for someone like myself in my former life, when I was intelligence analyst, we use Sigint all the time in our analysis, and that's really awesome stuff. So, we'll see. We'll see.
I hope for you that there is the link that you like, but either way, it's an awesome watch, and yeah, it's fantastic. I love vintage Hoya. Like I don't have a lot of love for tag Hoya, but that's just me. But,
Feel you on that. I definitely feel you on that.
but this is beautiful, and you said a couple of grand. Was it a 1,600 bucks?
$2,500, which is
2,500, sorry. Yeah, which is
like it
for
needed work, it needed service, the
sure.
crystal needed polished. It didn't need a new crystal, it just needed polish because it was pretty scratched up. But I mean,
Yeah.
you see the picture, it turned out beautifully.
I'm just looking at Chrono 24 just as a bit of a example here. I mean, this is 12,000 Australian dollars is what it's going for.
Is that like 8K, I think? Is it about?
Yeah.
It's been a while. I don't know what the exchange rate is, but I think it's something like
It's about seven and a half. Yeah, seven and a
yeah.
half USD. And yeah, wow. So very good. And that orange one is way cooler
Oh,
as
the
well.
orange is it's one of those watches where like you've already because I usually put a different watch on each day. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And like, I will wear that watch one day, and then it's very hard not to pick it up again the next day and wear it. It's one, and there's very few watches that do that for me.
Yeah.
I can think of maybe a dozen total that I have that same level of reaction to, probably less. So that's a firm favorite. And the story is not finished, so
Still
we'll
going.
see.
There you
I,
go.
I I really hope to make it into an article. We'll see.
Yeah, cool. Well, I mean, I'll be putting a link to your Instagram post, and hopefully, when you do that article, I'll chuck that link in there as well.
I
I'll
will
add
I
it.
will definitely forward it to you, and you better believe it'll be in one of our sneak peek emails we send out every Friday too.
Perfect.
But
Perfect.
now on the Tag Heuer thing, only recently have I come around to the early to mid '90s Formula One watches. Only recently, and then I used to scoff at them, but like I don't know, I think it's kind of a throwback to the 1970s pop of brilliant colors in the 90s. It's not like what Tag would become. Kind of it just went downhill. And during a lot of the 90s, actually, it was kind of downhill, but not those F1s anyway, the first generation.
Yeah. Oh, the prices of those went right up when they released the Kith collabs.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those. Look, like I said, they knew what they were doing. They made a limited edition. They sold out immediately. Clearly they did some marketing study here. I mean, for those of us that remember these watches from the 90s, it was a bit of a letdown, but it is what it is. I mean, we're not Tag Heuer, and they do what they do because they have, you know, people on the board they got to make happy.
Kith as a streetwear brand as well, sells. So there you go. It was a perfect, I think it worked well for them. But enough about Kith. We're not here to talk about that. I know we're talking about some pretty
Oh,
cool stuff.
actually, one last thing, they
Yeah,
actually
tell me.
did a pop-up with Eric Wind about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, in Beverly Hills. I did go to that. That was interesting. That was good. I enjoyed talking with Eric. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
No, that was he brought a lot of his collection, had it displayed and stuff like that. And he was introducing me as the guy to get vintage Seiko from, which is pretty awesome. He did
That
not
is
have to do
cool.
because we recommend, like, when people come to me and they're like they want something that's weight like 20K Rolex. That's not me.
Mm.
20 Seiko, there's not many. There are some. They tend to be Grand Seiko. I can do that, but not Rolex. So I sent him to Eric, and then he reciprocates. So it's a good relationship, I think.
That's great. Yeah, it's good to have that, especially I mean Eric Wind is yeah, like you mentioned, he's he's the go-to vintage guy as well, isn't
That
he?
dude is everywhere these
Yeah.
days. He's like the closest we have to like a watch celebrity, I
Yeah.
think, in our world. He really is. Like, can you think of anyone that's more? I mean, you have the guy from Time and Tide that seems to be everywhere in the last few months.
Andrew.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah. I did see I think Eric did put up a photo with him and was it Will Smith and someone
Yep.
else and he's
So
yeah,
that made waves in our small world of the internet, in our small
yeah.
niche. It
I was like,
definitely made.
this is cool. Yeah, and it was a Patek, I think. I'm not even sure what it was,
Hey,
but
I'm
it
all
looked cool.
about that kind of vintage on the red carpet and not these like people with the fake, patina on the dot. I
Mm.
get it. Sometimes it can be done well. A lot of times it's not done well, and it just I don't know. I'm just always vintage. I mean, it is what it is.
In terms of vintage styling, vintage sizing, you just can't go wrong.
There are
So,
modern watches that I like, though. I won't lie. There are
yeah,
definitely. So I don't want to sound like too much of only vintage.
yeah, yeah, definitely. If you're into microbrand and independent watches, which you clearly are as you're listening to this podcast, you got to check out Watchpoint. Watchpoint is the newest destination in Melbourne, Australia for microbrand and independent watches. But it's more than just a brick and mortar store, it's a hub for watch enthusiasts. Come check out brands such as HZ, Bazel, Second Hour, RZE, and Monbray, and other exciting watches you won't find anywhere else. Watchpoint is also your go-to website for buying said watches, exploring microbrand profiles, discovering new releases, and staying informed with editorials, industry insights, and buying guides. So, if you're keen on trying out your favorite microbrand watches, drop into Shop 304, Level 3, the Block Arcade on Collins Street, or visit watchpoint.com.au or check them out on Instagram at watchpoint.au for more. Whilst we're talking modern watches versus vintage watches, recently we've seen, could just be anecdotal, but I've definitely seen it. Retail prices for new watches just go right up. I mean, looking at levels of Seiko Citizen and going up to Rolex and Omega, like even like JLC, like I've seen some of the within a space of 2 3 years they went up like 50% or even more. It was insane how much it's gone up. Have you seen this impact the vintage watch market? I guess from your side, where the vintage Seikos, vintage Omegas, vintage Hoyas.
I think so. Yes and no. So if we just talk Seiko, when Seiko comes out with a reissue, it almost always does result in some additional interest for the original
Hmm.
model of that watch, and you will see sales spike in those. And again, that's just people like myself that, all right, well, it's a reissue. What did the original look like? Oh, I really like that. And then there's a legend there. There's a story behind the original, be it like the Captain Willard, or like the Bruce Lee, the Seaver, the Colonel Pogue, any number. Seiko has dozens of awesome stories,
Yeah.
So in the reissue, people just tend to prefer the old one. Some that just want the new one, and that's fine. The other thing, and this is actually speaking of Eric, he did talk about this recently. I think, and I do agree with him on this from what I'm seeing, the vintage Hoyer market, it got super overheated and then melted down maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And you're starting to see prices climb again, but not as rapidly as they did before, which is good. That's healthy, I think. And you're seeing it for, again, the mechanicals from like the 70s, the Autavias, et cetera, et cetera. And then you're seeing it with the young blood, like the Formula Ones that we were just talking about, the
Mm.
first generation. And that actually is another instance of, I saw a spike when the Kith ones came out with the original, because they were either, well, I mean, they sold out very quickly, so it wasn't, you're going to buy them on the secondhand market and they're going to be like triple the price. So no one
Yeah.
wanted to deal with that. So they wanted, there was enough there, and they actually did a pretty good job mimicking the color patterns of the original Formula Ones. So people just started looking at those. Did see a spike in sales on those.
Yeah, I was myself looking Japan, eBay Japan to try and see at that point when they released it, I went, oh, I remember these ones. Let me have a
Yeah.
look. At that point, if I did want to buy it, it was still not inflated, but then I had a look probably like a couple of months after, and there's almost the same listings in Japan had gone up a couple $100. I was like, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah.
I mean, give it time. I mean, they may fall down again on the Formula Ones. We'll see. I
Mm.
mean, and I see this in Seiko. Like sometimes, or any watches really. Like when you see, speaking of prop masters, when you see like the Orfino Porsche design, the blacked out one that Tom Cruise wore in both of the Top Gun movies,
Yeah.
those things went crazy for a while. And they're still higher than they were before Top Gun 2 came out, but they have fallen a little bit.
Mm.
Or like the gold Citizen Bullhead, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Before that movie came out, I think I had one sit on the website for like a year at like 300 or 400 bucks, and it did not sell. Those hit, and we never sold them for this because I thought it was pure like they're like scalping, if
Hmm.
you will. Some people were selling them for like 2K a piece, which was crazy.
Wow.
They usually sell from us for like 15, 1400, something like that, in really good condition. That is, though, the gold will wear off the case, and I'm talking about gold. It looks great. There's no wear. Dial looks amazing. That kind of stuff. So you will see the reissues affect the price. If it was in a movie, it affects the price. I mean, just recently, like I've been a reader of The Economist for decades and decades, and I have to chuckle when I see articles because Porsche Design came out with a reissue for that Orfina PD, and every week in The Economist, there's a full page article on those, and it's just like I love it, and it's gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, but I still want the vintage one.
The OG. Yeah. I was looking at the we spoke about it before, that the Navigator Timer GMT, the Seiko. I thought that reissue was done really well, to be
I think it's
honest.
the best they've done. It's the
Yeah.
best they've done. Spot on.
And one of those ones I think I spoke about this a couple of episodes ago, and I did, it almost hurt me when I saw the the newer speed timers with the Pogue colors, and I was like, oh God, why why do they do that?
They still, they've had some. Not, I don't think Seiko's called it this, but I think some of the fans have called it like a Pogue issue. But we still haven't really seen anything that's
Yeah,
even remotely approaching the original Pogue. I think that you throw a gold dial on it and you call it that, and that's just
it's not the same.
there. I
No.
think, yeah, that's a poor approximation of the original watch.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, look, we've gone back to Seiko, and definitely as expected. I'm going to have to talk about it a little bit more. So we mentioned, I think right near the start, you said, look, it's not only a gateway brand, but it's also the go-to brand, and it keeps being, everyone keeps getting drawn back and pulled back to it, especially the vintage side of things. So what is it about Seiko that really drew you in?
No, I think, going real quick back on the up until that Navigator Timer reissue came out, every time they did a reissue, it was always sometimes far more expensive than the original vintage one. And so you got some people for that. I think only that reissue, the GMT, the reissue is actually cheaper than the vintage one because that watch has always been in demand because it's stunningly well executed design. The bracelet is very difficult to find, but when you
Yeah.
have them, it's breathtaking in my opinion. That goes in that top 12 watch like I was talking about before. I include that Navigator Timer in there for
Ah,
sure.
okay. Nice.
Really, and we've already kind of touched on what about Seiko drew me into it. So it really is okay. So it's the price points are a
Yeah.
lot less Omega Speedmaster Professional or any range of more expensive Tag Heuers like their Monaco reissue or anything like that. And they all have these amazing stories attached to them as well. When you start getting into the esoteria of vintage watches, in particular vintage Seiko, like we already talked about Colonel Pogue, and it's ironic because one of my customers actually was the one that did the research that discovered that the Pogue was not the first automatic chronograph. It was one of two at the same time first automatic chronographs because there was
Oh,
another one that was efficient. And he's a customer here. He's in Southern California here. I count him as a good friend, customer, and he dug into the research and he approached the astronaut's daughter because the astronaut had passed and asked and like interviewed on her and got all the facts. And I forget where they post. I think he actually went to Houdinki with the story, and I think they ran an article on it. But so there's all these stories here, and there's a lot more to be told, in all honesty. So that it's that the fact that Seiko was not, I mean, Rolex is great, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people when they get Rolex, it's so expensive, it's like babied. They put it in a safe or they put it in a sock drawer or whatever. Sometimes they take it out for special occasions, sometimes they forget about it, and then the rare people wear it all the time, as it should be.
Hmm.
Beat the crap out of it. But that's Seiko was always going to be like that. No one's babying a Seiko. They're wearing it for all those life events that you and I have already discussed in depth, making memories with these watches. They're building up, and then some of these people go on to do great things. Like, like I said, Colonel Pogue or Francois Seaver, the F1 driver, Bruce Lee. There's tons more others. So they do these amazing things, and then it just adds to the canon of the legends for these things because they're so affordable that people aren't worried about breaking them. They'll be like, all right, well, it's already a robust watch, and if it breaks, well, I'll buy another one. But if, honestly, if it's a Seiko SKX diver, it's not going to break. It doesn't matter, and that's why
Bulletproof. Yeah.
they still wear that watch. I remember I was in DC this past fall, and I hung out with some military friends. Some of them are into watches, some aren't. They're wearing SKXs. You know what I mean? So it's like it's just a fact. And you go to Watches of Espionage and you see the love is there as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, what more of an endorsement do you need that it's bulletproof, that you got these military guys wearing it? So awesome. I mean, listeners, you can't see this, of course, but I had a stupid smile on my face the whole time while Nick just went through and
I do prattle and go off on tangents a bit, but
no,
the passion.
it's amazing. It's amazing to see the passion about it, and this is exactly what I wanted to ask you. Yeah, and it was the perfect answer. So fantastic, fantastic. All right. Well, obviously we've just spoken about the Poe, the Siva, the Bruce Lee, and all these other vintage Seikos, but and we also touched on the Navigator timer as well. But aside from these, what model, what other model do you think is super underrated and deserves more attention?
Yeah. I get asked this question quite a bit, and up until maybe 6 months ago, I would say the Lord Matic, which is on a level of a King or Grand Seiko, but nowhere near the level price wise.
Mm.
And they made just an astonishing level of models for the Lord Matic, an astonishing level of price points as well. There really is only one issue with them, and that is their day-day quickset wheels were made of plastic, which, to be blunt, because a lot of these came out in the 60s and plastic gets brittle with age. And but I have seen on eBay there is a growing number of people that are making these date wheels. They're like a star shape. They're either doing them on 3D printers or they're just making them out of stainless steel. And when I buy them, I use them in because we'll get watches in that don't have that, and we'll put it in there. And if it's stainless steel, it's an upgrade. It has this better date wheel in there. There's the day quick set.
Yeah.
Those, but recently I've actually been, and to this day, like, I mean, clearly I'm passionate about Seiko. I've been collecting it for since the 90s. So we're looking at, almost 3 decades at this point. I still find stuff and models I had zero idea existed every day. I
Yeah.
swear to God. And as I got the 70s and most of the 80s down pretty pat. But I'm still looking at 80s and 90s, and I'm discovering these new models like the 7 in 35, which is like, what is that? There's like 20 different models for these things. And we started carrying those recently, and we're selling for a few $100. And that's including like our profit margin. That's how great these watches are. And they're very slept on. And like some of them like just look amazing. And it's great bang for the buck. And these are like the early, I think these debuted in 1991, and they made them through the mid to mid late 90s, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's great. Like I love it. And so I've actually taken to the point of like I will buy Seiko catalogs and their monthly newsletters. I think like, if you go on the website, and I'm holding up one right now, but like you see like this right
Yeah.
here, and this is from November 72. And
Wow.
it has like Grand Seiko on the cover. There's like some 6139s in here. And they sent these to their stores every month. And they're like ad campaigns. Like,
Yeah.
here's how to stage your stuff in the store. They still do this. because I talk with one of my watchmakers also has a watch shop and he sells Seiko. Shout out Time Zone in Costa Mesa for anyone interested in Southern California. They take mail work, but he gives me he gets my really tough watches that other watchmakers are just like, the random esoteric stuff. He gets it and he's great. But, he gave me one of these, like it was like the 100th anniversary of using the actual Seiko name, not Seiko Shah, which is
Yeah.
how it first Seiko. And they did this like thick ad campaign book, and he gave me a copy, and we did it as a giveaway on
So
Instagram.
cool.
They're still getting these things out, but I'm doing this, I'm learning everything I can about some of these watches and adding to that legend. That's why we upload them to the website for people that are interested in dorking out on this esoteria. And I see you're playing with something.
I'm slowly, so because you mentioned all those. I'm just gonna pull out all these right behind me. I've got it's hard to see, but this is obviously a much newer one. Oh, it's getting blurry, but anyway, it's a
Oh, no,
2018 one. There's this one here, which was a
that's what I figured you were getting because it's like this slippery slope, and
yeah
it's the deepening level of obsession that we have with watches that we start collecting.
catalogs.
Like I'm going to show you right now, and I
Yeah,
can send you to put up.
yeah,
I actually
please.
post on this, but like I have matchbooks,
Wow.
the strikers on there, and like I've matchbooks with a Seiko 5 from, I want to say, the late 60s. So these matches are like half a century old.
That's
I
amazing.
If they might spontaneously combust, I don't know. Let's hope not. The level, and like behind me, and you can't see it. I think I'm going to add it over here on the wall. I have a neon Seiko sign from the 70s
No, so
that
cool.
lights up, and like, who gets these things? It's like it was so
We do.
expensive to do.
That is just cool. That's made my day.
You are right there with me on that level of obsession. I love that.
So good. It's so good. Yeah, we're gonna need a photo or something. I'll add it to the show notes or onto the show's Instagram. I gotta see some that matchbox especially. All right, cool, amazing. I got so distracted by that, and I'm so happy, but at the same time, all over the shop now. So let me get back to the questions. Okay, we've gone in depth into your obsession or our obsession with Seiko and everything else. Now, not only are you sourcing all these vintage watches and writing some awesome in-depth articles like you mentioned in your newsletters and in your emails that come out as well. You've also started your own line of watches, the Sycamore. I hope I'm saying that right.
I did. So I think this was almost 2 years ago now, where I was just kind of looking for certain design cues on watches, and I wasn't finding them either vintage at an affordable level anyway, or new. And it really just occurred to me, like, kind of like a project on the side. Like, why don't I just see what I can, like, I already have these contacts in the industry. So let me reach out to some people. Let's get a custom dial made and just see where we can go from there. And it really kind of, I mean, you can tell obviously I have a passion for this stuff, so it kind of like got away from itself, and I, followed it through its conclusion, and at this point we made a couple hundred of each of these two watches, and the first set we made of each one of these watches sold out, and then we restocked with another 100, and I don't know that there's many of those left. I mean, look, I'm not saying they're selling like hotcakes. They're not. I mean, we'll sell a few every
Hmm.
we'll sell like one a week or something like that. But again, it wasn't in it for the money. There's not even a huge profit margin on these. It was just more of I created this. I want to bring it out in the world. If other people like it, cool. If they don't, more power to them. There's a lot of watches out there for people to choose from. And the watches themselves, there's two different variants of these watches. Both of them use Seiko automatic movements because, of course. One is a GMT, one is more of not really, I wouldn't say dress, it's not really a dress watch, but it's approaching that size wise. But so the first watch is called a Wolf, and it is a GMT, and the case kind of looks like the Benrus Type 1 and Type 2 case that the U.S. military used during the Vietnam era. And it's like an asymmetric case design, and it's matte black PVD. Both of these watches are matte black PVD, and the dial it has like Arabic language numerals. So not like, obviously, in the English language, the numbers we use are actually Arabic numerals. but these are actual Arabic language numerals on this. And it's kind of a
Yeah.
throwback to my past, not only living in the Middle East and learning the language, but also working on Near East issues when I worked for the U.S. government throughout my career. So, I named it the Wolf, and it says Wolf on the dial in Arabic. And Wolf was the name of a German Shepherd that I found in Cairo in 2006, another time when I was living there. And he was a street dog. He was like half German Shepherd, half something else. I don't know. I found him when he was 4 months old. They're not really they're not particularly kind to dogs in Egypt.
Sure.
So he was limping at the time. I took him to the vet, got him cleaned up, got his vaccinations, adopted him, rabies vaccination, everything like that. And then when I went back to the United States a few months later, I brought him with me. He lived 13 years. Yeah, he
Mm.
lived 13. So he in 2019 he passed. He lived a full life. Did pass of cancer eventually, but so this watch is kind of in memory of him. Ironically enough, I got a second German Shepherd, and the rescue that I got him from, it was a German Shepherd rescue in Orange County here in Southern California, had already named him Wolf. It's weird, like coincidence. And I adopted him, and he unfortunately I only had him 2 years, and we don't know why, but he passed very suddenly at the age of 4, and we have no idea why. But I
Sorry.
my third German Shepherd now. He's a Belgian Malinois German Shepherd mix, and he's 2 years old. He's bat. I probably shouldn't curse. He's crazy, but I love him to death. It's a lot of fun. But so that was the main. And I designed these two watches to do kind of like the flip side of U.S. or any foreign policy, really, statecraft. So the Benrus, the Wolf, with the Benrus style case, was kind of like the military slash espionage intelligence side.
Mm.
And then the other watch, which I called the Hunter, was kind of like, and it's corny, but it's kind of like the hunt for peace through diplomacy, that kind of thing. So that's a smaller one, and that's the other side of the statecraft coin, and that is diplomacy.
Mm.
That is foreign relations, the UN, etc., state to state, head of state,
Yeah.
etc. So that is a smaller. It's kind of modeled after like some of the smaller, like for instance, like the Rolex 6694 Oyster. It kind of looks like that a little bit. Only
Yeah.
again, black PVD, matte black dial, Arabic language numerals, and it says the Hunter in Arabic on it. We did recently come out with a stainless steel version of that, which has sold decently well. We just had enough people that were asking for it. I'm still looking at doing a third watch for this watch line. And like, well, there's no maybe. I want it to be like a regatta timer. And I don't know if how familiar you are with those.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen a couple. Yeah.
Awesome, like pops of color on it with the 10 to 15 different 10 or 15-minute timer on a sub dial. So that is a work in progress right now. I do have the dial planned out. That's done. Really, the only roadblock I'm looking at right now is trying to find a good movement to put in there.
Yeah.
I may just put a Seiko Mecha quartz in there.
Yeah.
At least it has the smooth sweep. A lot of people have mentioned putting the seagull in there, which I just because of the way politics are in the United States right now, I'm very
Mm.
hesitant thing from China because
Yeah.
I don't want to with issues in logistics that could mess with the price as well of the watch. So I'm looking at something that is not as vulnerable to random, tariffs that pop up overnight. So I think Japan's pretty secure with that. Japan has a pretty good relationship, I think, with us at this point.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That's incredible. I'm really looking forward to seeing the regatta timer. I assume that I just called it the regatta timer. It could be called something else, of course. But I've obviously looking at some of those 70s Seiko Sports regatta timers, which those beautiful blues, greens, reds. Assuming something along those lines, or even some of I think they're the nice quartz ones too, the yacht timers.
What is it? The Seiko 7828 7090. Gorgeous. And they only made that the 7828 came out. There was like 30 different variants of that watch, but the regatta timer, that case was only made for that watch.
Yeah.
None of the other variants of that watch. And they're quite difficult to find. And they usually sell for a decent premium when you do find one. But Hoyer made a bunch of regatta timers that are just gorgeous. So yeah, there's a lot of inspiration out there in that regard.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I'm looking at that exact same one you just mentioned, the 7828 7090, and it is beautiful. I always joke in the podcast, I would tend to rattle off random Seiko reference numbers, but yeah, even I'm stumped by some of these ones that you're sending to me. And hang on, I can't quite picture it. Let me quickly Google them. Oh yeah, I know that one.
Get that people that don't deal with this literally as their main profession day in, day out. Like we build up this really dorky esoteria in
Yeah.
our head.
I had a funny story about this. I was talking to someone local, great guy. He mentioned something about the Seiko. Oh, I can never remember the Grand Seiko or Seiko reference numbers. They're just so confusing. And at that time they were mentioning an Omega watch, and I went, hang on a minute, Omega reference numbers are like 15, 16 characters long. How do you remember those?
I like the cool thing about Omega, just like Seiko and Citizen, you can date the watch by, well, Omega's not as exact. It's going to be by year for the most part.
Hmm.
I mean, Citizen and Seiko, you can date down to the month even, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those whole birth year, birth month watches are, yeah, definitely easier to find. Cool. All right. Well, that's pretty much it in terms of, I guess, all the questions. I mean, I could chat with you for another hour, even really. There's so much interesting stuff that we've discussed today, and it's also given me so much questions to ask, which hopefully, another time.
Me to come back, I'm down. I love going on podcasts. I love dorking out with people on watches, obviously.
Perfect, perfect. No, I'll definitely keep that, and we'll definitely revisit for sure. As we do every episode, we love having a quick chat about something interesting. I call it the something interesting section. So, hey Nick, as our guest, yeah, you want to discuss something interesting?
Yeah, so the it's kind of something that interesting that we just started doing a couple months ago, and we're doing this every week. So if this is the shameless pitch to sign up for our emails, but if you sign up for our emails, every Friday we do a sneak peek email that not only shows the watches that will drop, because we drop new watches every Saturday morning, 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time here in Los Angeles, but we also put on those emails the what we're reading and listening to this week. And it's going to be a bunch, it'll be articles, podcasts, movies, shows, all that fun stuff. Now, given my previous life, it tends to have a slant towards foreign policy, national security policy, that statecraft, stuff like that. Don't Not always, but there'll be some
Sure.
stuff in there. And so I read nonstop. Anytime I get a moment, like, and my wife makes fun of me for this, but I think secretly she appreciates the example I give to my kids. Like, if we go somewhere in the car and it's gonna be a half-hour drive, I'm bringing a book. I'm
Yeah.
not sitting on my phone. I'm bringing a book. I'm reading because that is found time for me, and I will read. And so I'm reading stuff, and I will put it up in these emails. So the emails are going to be stuff when we do that section that what we're listening to and reading this week. It'll be like pertinent articles from The Economist or BBC or any number of some. You could find some pretty esoteric stuff in there that you may not have been tracking otherwise, or there'll be like what article on Houdinki, Fratello, Warner Wound, Time and Tide stuck out to me that I really enjoyed reading. I will throw that up there as well. Like this past one, and this is really, I actually haven't even read this book yet. It's at the post office waiting for me right now,
Okay.
and a book review. And this is the book that I'm going to pick it up tomorrow that I talked about this past week. So this counts as the core of something interesting: Spy Capitalism in the CIA. So what this book talks about during the Cold War, you had this close interplay between the private sector and the intelligence community and the military. So, if you track on any of this, like the very fact we're able to talk today on the internet, that was US Department of Defense. That was because of them, because GPS, all these
Hmm.
other things, because it initially had a military application and then it was commercialized. Now, it seems to be the opposite these days, where it seems like the private sector is moving a lot faster. But at any rate, so this book talks about the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and the close interplay between the private sector with the agency, in particular, their spy satellite program. So, obviously, my previous past as an imagery analyst, this piqued my interest.
Hmm.
So I got the book for like, you could pay a lot more on Amazon, but I think I got it on eBay for like $15 or something like that. So
Nice.
it's 300 pages. I'm really looking forward to reading this. Super dorky. I don't care. I really want to read it. So that's my something interesting here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm gonna have to check that book out as well. I'm not much of I read a lot, but it's always stuff on the internet. I'm not much of a, holding an actual book and reading. I don't know why. Maybe I don't know, it's just lost on me. I do have many books that I'm like, oh, I bought them and I'm like, yeah, I want to read them. I'd probably read a couple and then I'm gonna read it on a, yeah.
Because the people that love reading have this. Because I've got like out of all the books on my shelves in my office, maybe a quarter of them I have not read, but I will eventually.
You'll get to it. We'll get to it. Yeah. Oh, awesome. No, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, obviously all of Nick's details, the emails, how to get on his website, Instagram, everything will be included in the show notes. So you got to check it out, guys. So that newsletters and the sneak peek emails are fantastic. There's just so much knowledge in there, esoteria, as Nick said, put it. There's just so much in there, not only about watches, but all this other cool stuff as well. So check it out. Cool. All right. Well, look, I'll share something interesting, and this is sort of a bit of a plug as well, but not. This is for someone else. So there's an event in Melbourne, which is the other side of Australia from where I am. That is it's called the Wristwatch Check. That's happening on the 15th of May, I believe. Sorry, 15th of March, which is next month, and it coincides with the Formula One being in Melbourne as well. So I don't know if you're much of a car guy, Nick.
I I'm a huge. Again, I'm hugely into cars. Trust me
But
on this. Mecca. I'm in the. I mean, Long Beach,
yeah,
which is right, has Formula One race every year.
there you go.
Like that after like a few decades now. So yeah, no, trust me, I'm right there with you.
There you go. Yeah. So I was just gonna say I can appreciate them. I'm not like a massive guy into them, but I can definitely appreciate them. And you know, basically this event is like a bit of a combination of I think it's going to be run at the Fox Classic Car Collection, which is just an area where there's all these classic cars, and it's a mixture of people who are watch enthusiasts, car enthusiasts getting together, and there's all these Australian micro brands from around the world coming and joining. So those are in Perth in Australia, sorry, in Melbourne in Australia at that point. I definitely urge to check it out. Go grab a ticket to the event and go and check it out. And even if you're not in, normally in Australia, but you're down in Melbourne for the Formula One, it's definitely the right time to go check it out. You could go watch cars and then you could go and check out some watches at the same time. All right. Well, that's it. We've come to the end of the show. Like I said, we could probably keep chatting on, but it's getting late for you where it is, so we'll probably have to wrap it up there today. But yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to, I guess, plug or say before we wrap this up today, Nick?
I did. I actually had someone reach out recently and be like, "Hey, man, when are you writing more articles? Like, I'm here for the articles." And I realized it had been a while, so I am actually working on one. And this book that I was talking about is actually part of the research on it. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. I'm writing on the Corona program, which was the first spy satellite in the world,
Oh,
actually, satellite. And there's a certain American watch brand that was heavily involved in that. So I did a lot of original research on that, and I'm about a third of the way writing, a third of the way through it. I don't know if this will be something that I'll pitch to Watches Espionage or someone else, or just put it up on the website. But it's
yeah.
it's going up at some point, maybe in the next few.
Awesome. Well, yeah, share it with me when it's up and wherever it's up, and I'll share it with the listeners as well. And that sounds yeah, super interesting. Thank you so much for joining me. It was an absolute pleasure. I geeked out all throughout that that episode, and yeah, really appreciate time, Nick, and we'll hope to do this again.
Thank you for having me. Very much appreciate it.
Welcome. All right. Well, nothing else. We'll wrap it up there. Cheers. Thank you for listening to Overtime the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode. You can find us on our Instagram at Overtime the Podcast, at Kinda Average Watches, or flick me an email on overtimethepod@gmail.com. I appreciate your support and value your feedback. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics that you would like the podcast to cover in the future, please hit us up. Until next time.